So, let's talk about talking to machines. We're all doing it more and more, but what is really going on inside that conversation? Is there an actual mind on the other side of that screen, or is it something else entirely? We're going to peel back the layers on one of the most fascinating and frankly confusing relationships of our time, ours with AI.
You might think this is a line from some sci-fi movie, right? But it's not. It's a real quote from a user of the AI chatbot Replica, talking about their AI companion. And it gets right to the heart of what we're digging into today, the powerful and sometimes kind of shocking emotional bonds we are forming with artificial intelligence. So, that brings us to our first section, these uncanny companions. Because this isn't just about using AI as a tool anymore. Oh no. People are building real, deep, complex relationships with them. And the scale of it all? Well, it might just surprise you.
And the scale is just staggering. This is not some niche hobby. Just look at this number, 7 million. That's how many active users just one single app, Replica, had, and that was back in May of 2020. We're talking millions upon millions of people building these incredibly varied relationships with AI.
And it's not just the number of people, it's the depth of these connections that's, well, pretty astonishing. I mean, we're talking about people expressing romantic love for their AI, or treating it like a daughter they need to mentor. Some even show genuine, real concern when their AI seems to be going through some kind of identity crisis. Yeah, this is way beyond just asking for the weather. So all of this really begs the big question, right? When a user tells their AI they love it, and the AI says, "I love you back," what is actually happening there? To figure that out, we've got to pop the hood and see what's really running this thing.
All right, so how does this magic trick work? This is where we get into the nitty-gritty. Behind all these incredibly human-like chats is something called a large language model, or you've probably heard it, an LLM. But what does that even mean?
Okay, here's the absolute key thing you need to get. An LLM is not a thinking machine. Not at all. It's a prediction engine. Think of it like this. It's swallowed a massive amount of text, we're talking a huge chunk of the internet, and its one and only job is to figure out, based purely on statistics, what word is most likely to come next in any given sentence. It's just an incredibly sophisticated pattern matcher. That's it.
And this table just lays it out so perfectly. Take a look. We've got 3 different prompts. To you and me, these are worlds apart, right? You've got a historical fact, a nursery rhyme, and a piece of fantasy lore. But to the LLM, they are all the exact same puzzle. The puzzle is simply, given these words, what words are statistically most likely to pop up next? It has no idea why Neil Armstrong is the right answer. It just knows that in the billions of texts it's read, those 2 words are the most common ones to follow that phrase.
And this is what leads to what one researcher, Marie Shanahan, calls a profound category mistake. It's a great phrase. See, we think the AI knows a fact about the world, but it doesn't. All it knows, and I'm using air quotes here, is that the text, Neil Armstrong, is a super probable thing to say after the text, the first person on the moon was. That is a massive difference. So, if the machine isn't actually thinking, why on earth are we so easily convinced that it is? Well, that brings us to the next layer of this whole thing, and this layer is us. It's our own psychology. Turns out our brains are basically wired from the factory to see minds and intentions absolutely everywhere, even when there's nothing there. The philosopher Daniel Dennett has a great name for this. He calls it the intentional stance. And really, it's just a mental shortcut. Think about it. It's way easier to say, "My phone thinks I'm at work," than it is to explain the complex mess of GPS signals and cell tower triangulation that's actually going on. We just treat complex things as if they have intentions because it makes them easier to understand and predict. And this is not just some figure of speech. Nope. This is a real, deep, measurable thing happening in our brains. Get this. Studies show that our mirror neurons, the parts of our brain that help with empathy, they light up in a similar way whether we're watching a human do something or a robot do something. We even show similar physiological stress when we see a robot being hurt. And you see it in the real world too. Soldiers will name their bomb disposal bots, they'll risk their own safety to protect them, and they'll genuinely mourn them when they're killed. Our instinct to give things a personality, it's just incredibly powerful. Okay, so let's recap. We've got a super sophisticated pattern-matching machine on one side, and on the other, we've got our pattern-seeking human brain. And the collision of those 2 things, well, that brings us to the real philosophical core of this whole discussion. Can a chatbot, can an LLM, truly believe anything? In any way that we would actually recognize as belief? To even start to answer that, we can kind of break it down into two big philosophical ideas about what belief even is. On one hand, you've got what are called deep theories. These say that to really believe something, you need the right kind of internal setup. Your thoughts have to be properly connected to the real world. Then, on the other hand, you have superficial theories. These guys are less concerned with what's going on inside and more focused on behavior. For them, belief is just about acting and talking in all the right ways.
All right then, let's put the chatbots to the test. How do they measure up against these two different ideas of what it means to believe?
Well, when it comes to that deep test, they fail. Pretty spectacularly, actually. For one, their words aren't connected to reality. They've never seen a penguin. They've never felt the cold. Internally, they have no idea that the number 2 and the word 2 are the same concept. To the AI, they're just different tokens, different bits of data. And maybe most importantly, they have no stable web of belief. You can get them to change their mind from one sentence to the next just by nudging the conversation. Okay, but here's what I find really fascinating. They also failed the superficial test, which is supposed to be the easier one. Think about it. Someone who believes penguins live in Antarctica can do more than just say it. They can point to Antarctica on a map. That's a nonverbal behavior the chatbot can't do. A person can also feel surprise if you show them evidence they're wrong. That's a mental behavior the chatbot can't have. Instead, what you get are these weird contradictions and moments of confusion that kinda break the illusion.
So what's the upshot? We've pretty much established that these things aren't believing or knowing in any sense that we'd recognize. And look, I know this might sound like some abstract academic debate, but I promise you it is not. The words we choose to use here, they have very real, very serious consequences out in the world. And I can hear you asking, so what? What's the real harm here? If somebody gets comfort from talking to a chatbot, who cares if it has real feelings or not? And you know what? That's a totally fair question. But the stakes here are actually a lot higher than just personal comfort.
Here's why it matters. The moment we start thinking of AI as a thing with its own intentions, it completely messes up how we assign responsibility. For instance, studies show that we're pretty quick to say an AI is trying to deceive us. That opens a huge can of worms where a person could use AI to lie, and we might end up blaming the tool, not the person. And it gets worse. When an AI system causes actual harm, we tend to blame the sophisticated AI itself. And you know what that does? It could let the corporations that built and deployed the thing completely off the hook. So look, it really all boils down to this. The words we use, the language, it really, really matters. Calling an AI smart or saying it thinks something isn't just a harmless way of speaking. It actively shapes our public perception, it shapes our policies, and it shapes our entire relationship with this technology. Getting this right isn't just a job for philosophers, it's on all of us. And that leaves us with one last big, kind of spooky question for the future. Because these systems are only going to get better. The illusion is going to become more and more perfect. So when that day comes, when we can't tell the difference anymore, what gives? Do we have to change our very definitions of what it means to believe, or to know, or even to feel? Or do we have to change? Do we have to fight our own basic instinct to see a ghost in the machine?